Hello everyone, this is the Traditionalist, and today I'll be talking about Satanism and feminism and how they are related. Now, if you are confused or intrigued, well then watch the rest of the video to figure out how this connection was created. So, obviously you are wondering, how is a political ideology that kind of transcends, different religions and all that, how is that connected to an obscure religious movement? Well, there's a lot more connections than you might have originally thought. In this video, we'll explain them. So, for context, we need to go back to the 1840s. In the 1840s, a religious movement began called Spiritualism. And to sum it up, Spiritualism was a belief that spirits of the dead exist and have the ability and the desire to communicate with the living. Now, if this sounds kind of familiar, that's because what this is basically witchcraft. And as we know, witchcraft is an abomination in the Bible. The Lord hates it. And he even says for witches to have their lives ended. And no, I'm not calling for that on this channel, but I am saying that this is a very serious thing. And so, in reality, this is nothing more than witchcraft. Now, with this context understood, I'll explain how this spiritualist movement was connected to feminism. While, as with most examples of witchcraft, the majority of those in this movement were women. In fact, there was a disproportionately high amount of women in the spiritualist movement, and they played a leading role in this movement, and most of its major, leaders, it wasn't really like an organized movement, but still, like, most of its prominent figures were women. And so this movement basically lasted all the way until the 1920s, especially in English speaking countries. And this is important to remember because, as we know, that is where feminism really took off. And so, as you could probably guess, based on the name of this channel and stuff, I am definitely not a feminist, and I do not support any of the types of feminism that have existed. And, I don't think it's too controversial to say I'm against third wave feminism. Most men are, and a lot of women are too. And not even that much for second wave feminism, because, it was basically about, smashing the patriarchy, liberating yourselves, and just being a thought and sleeping around with everyone. But it is a lot more controversial to be against first wave feminism, but through this video I think you'll understand why I am wary of that too. So, going back to what I was saying about spiritualism, most of the people involved in it were women. But spiritualism was not just a religious movement. In fact, most of the main spiritualists supported causes such as the abolition of slavery, but importantly, women's suffrage, in other words, first wave feminism. And so, a lot of these witches supported first wave feminism. And now, you might say, okay, well, some bad people supported feminism, but it doesn't make the movement itself bad. But I think if you understand, the real history, then you might kind of realize that this is not, they didn't just support feminism. I was reading through, a lot of, these early feminists, and a lot of them said that because spiritualism, unlike Christianity, allowed, women to be the leaders, to, be the main focus, to be the ones really spearheading the movement, a lot of them gained public speaking knowledge through this movement, and therefore a lot of them got this idea that, well, women are just as good at leading as men, and they're just as competent, and that, if we can do public speaking at these spiritualist movements, and we can lead these kind of spiritualist gatherings, then why don't we just lead other gatherings? And so a lot of them gained kind of this confidence, they gained this leadership from spiritualism, and because of that, then once they got outside these secret meeting halls, then they would take those abilities and use it to promote feminism. And so, in fact, I heard about this interesting study which showed that almost all of the early feminists were spiritualists. And so this is not a good thing. Now, this is not really about whether you support feminism or not, but you have to understand that this was a movement almost entirely headed by witches. And a lot of these weren't even hiding it either. A lot of these were open witches, but even secular historians who don't believe in witchcraft or all of that, even they admit that most of the early feminist leaders were spiritualists, and that these women didn't see the need to be led by men anymore, because in the spiritualist movement they had been the leaders, and so they thought, well, if men don't need to lead us in these meetings, then why do men need to lead us in general? And so this brings me obviously to the topic of feminism overall, and well, first wave feminism specifically. Now again, I'm opposed to it because of the fact that it upends the natural order that God created of God being the head, followed by the man, followed by the women, followed by the children. And I'm not really going to debate this thing, because I could make a much more detailed video about feminism and why it's wrong, but essentially it disrupts that order. First wave feminism, although a lot more mild, was what began that destruction, the slow destruction of family values and the family structure, and of course this led to the collapse of society in general. But I think even for those of you who used to have pretty favorable views of at least first wave feminism, knowing that a lot of these feminist leaders were involved in the occult, in spiritualism, and in witchcraft, maybe that will give you a different idea about what first wave feminism was really about, and that it wasn't actually such a glorious movement after all. In fact, a lot of these people were communicating with dead spirits, and so in some way they were communicating with Satan as well. And so if those are the kind of leaders, well, there's something up with that. And so that's my video that explains the link between spiritualism or Satanism and feminism, and how there's actually a lot deeper root and deeper connection between these two than you might have previously thought. And so no, feminism didn't just arise out of women suddenly realized all of a sudden that they wanted rights. No, there's a lot of these witches who were pushing this to disrupt God's order. So I know this video will be controversial. I know some people will dislike this, but regardless, if you did enjoy this or if you learned something new, then please don't forget to click the like button and subscribe. I'll see you next time.